Hello again. I mentioned yesterday that within a generation, much of Britain's cultural heritage of music, art, and literature is likely to be lost. This is part of a deliberate decision by intellectuals and academics who hope to create a firebreak with the past so that the rising generation will no longer read or treat with reverence British writers of the 19th century. Nor, it is hoped, will they become familiar with the music of that century, nor wish to look at pictures by artists like Landseer, Constable or Turner. It's a little bit like the Khmer Rouge resetting Cambodia's history at year zero. The reason for this determination to break with the past is simple enough to understand. At first there was a stated aim to rid ourselves of connections with slavery. Then this became expanded to anything with links to colonialism, and now people are talking of the imperial past. This means that all the books written before the Second World War, and especially those of 19th century authors like Dickens, Trollope, Austen and so on, were written in the context of a white society, and there's no mention at all of black people in them. This is felt to be inappropriate for the modern new world in which we live, and many academics think that we should only get school children to study more recent books, especially those by black people. The OCR Examination Board has added books by black writers which can be studied for GCSE or A Levels, and have at the same time removed all works of literature from their syllabus which are earlier than 1938. No Jane Austens or Dickens anymore, you see. There are two serious problems with this. It's not that black people cannot write good literature. Of course they can. I've mentioned James Baldwin, who really deserved to be in the running for the Nobel Prize in that field. And one of the books in the new syllabus that OCR are producing is certainly a classic. Yeah, it's an excellent book, Lonely Londoners by Sam Selvin. It's one of the best descriptions of London in the 1950s ever written, and extremely funny into the bargain. The language that Sam Selvin uses is absolutely sublime. However, it hasn't been chosen by OCR on literary merit. None of the books which they have selected to include in the syllabus have been chosen for literary merit, in fact, which, when you think about it, is a bit rummy when you're getting young people to study English literature. If they're not chosen because they're good English or they have no literary merit, what are the grounds for including them in the syllabus? The Lonely Londoners was chosen simply because it's about the Windrush generation, and that makes it very topical, because the very expression Windrush generation was only coined a year or two ago and now appears all over the place. This book is with it, and it's written by a guy from Trinidad, Sam Selvin. Perfect. Another of the novels to be studied is a science fiction adventure called The Parable of the Sower, which was published in 1993. I've read it, and it's a decent enough science fiction novel, but it's not great or even good literature. In fact, to be honest, it's not a particularly brilliant science fiction novel either. It's been included in the syllabus for two reasons. Firstly, it's by a black woman, which evens up both the gender and race balance nicely, and also it deals with the catastrophic effect on the earth of climate change, another very topical theme. Then we have a book called Girl, Woman, Other written by another black woman. This is about 12 black British women and almost entirely bound up with gender, race and intersectionality. These are all hot topics. In the description to this video I give a link to a news item about these changes, but if you go straight to the OCR website you can see the full list of what they're putting on their new syllabus. This then is the problem. These novels have not been chosen because they are great literature, which you would think for A-level English literature might be a prerequisite. No, they've been chosen because they are relevant and deal with modern things which we have heard about on the news in the last year or so. The Windrush generation, climate change, intersectionality. Sam Selvon's novel, of course, is great literature, but that's by the by. It's the Windrush generation aspect which has caused it to be included. The second problem is a simple one. In any given year or decade, 99.9% of the novels published will not be good literature. They might enjoy a vogue, they might be popular novels, but most of them vanish without trace after a few years. They will be forgotten, and only the truly worthwhile works will survive and be reprinted year after year. This winnowing out process takes time, and it's only after the passage of 50 years or a century that we can honestly say, this is a classic, this is good literature. Including a book published just 3 years ago, as is the case with Girl, Woman, Women, Other, is nuts. It's a fashionable read, but it will take a few decades before we can judge it objectively. The same goes for the parable of the Sower, which has been around for less than 30 years. This is why we have always used older books in English literature examinations. History has yet to pass judgment on something as recently published as Girl, Woman, Other. For instance, it uses a very modern device of writing with no punctuation or quotation marks, which is all the rage these days. It's entirely possible that this will in the future be seen as a trendy gimmick rather than good literature. The purpose of all this, though, is, as I said at the beginning, to break the connection which people in Britain have with their past. By steering children away from classics of English literature such as Pride and Prejudice or Great Expectations, another link with the history of their nation will be broken, and a generation will grow up who will look at you blankly if you suggest that somebody is behaving like Scrooge. Who on earth is Scrooge? Never heard of him. Why do people suppose that we used to get children to read Dickens' novels or Kipling's poetry? It was not for the political beliefs contained in them, but rather because they are perfect examples of the use of the English language. We hoped that young people would learn in this way something about their language and the best means of constructing sentences and putting words together correctly. They're not going to learn this from a second-rate science fiction novel about climate change, still less from a book like Girl, Woman, Other, which contains no full stops or capital letters. As I say, this style of writing is currently a bit of a craze, but I suspect that in a few years we should be laughing at it. Why we would use a novelty turn of this sort to teach English literature is a mystery to me, and if the author had not been a black woman, I doubt that anybody would take such writing as being worth studying at A level.